2 months. That's how long it took Epic Games to accidentally create the most profitable entertainment product of the 21st century. This should make absolutely no sense. Games that generate billions are meticulously planned, carefully crafted, backed by massive budgets. They're not supposed to be panic decisions made by terrified executives who thought they were about to lose everything. But Epic Games broke every rule in the book. They took Save the World, a zombie survival game that nobody wanted to play, made one single change, and accidentally created the most recognizable gaming brand among Gen Z and Alpha. $9 billion from a free game in just 3 years. While every other company was still trying to sell expensive watches, Epic discovered they could make more money giving away the watch for free and selling designer watch bands. $60 price tags became irrelevant when people would pay $20 for a banana costume. But here's what nobody saw coming. Epic didn't just stumble onto a new business model, they accidentally discovered that players don't want to buy power, they want to buy identity. My name is Moriarty, my YouTube channel is Really Cool, and this is the story of how a development disaster proved that the entire gaming industry had been doing business completely wrong for decades. It's about taking massive risks, making controversial decisions, and discovering that sometimes the best way to make money is to give your product away for free. That $9 billion figure, it took years of court battles and leaked documents to get those real numbers, and researching stories like this means digging through a lot of sensitive industry data. When you're accessing financial filings, internal company documents, industry reports, and developer resources, you're creating a detailed trail of your research interests. Your ISP can see every site you visit, every document you access, every search you make. They know exactly what companies you're investigating, what legal cases you're following, even what time of day you do your research. This is where Surfshark VPN comes in. It encrypts all your research activity, whether you're accessing confidential business data, court records, or just protecting your channel analytics and business communications. Everything stays private. Your ISP just sees encrypted traffic. They can't tell if you're researching Epic Games or watching cat videos. Use code Moriarty, MRIXRT, or go to surfshark.com/MRIXRT for 4 extra months free. They offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it. Here's what makes this story absolutely insane. None of it was supposed to happen. The game they created, Fortnite Battle Royale, started as something nobody wanted to play. Tim Sweeney, Epic Games founder, described the original concept as Minecraft meets Left 4 Dead, which, let's be honest, doesn't exactly scream revolutionary gameplay. The idea was simple. You and 3 friends would team up to fight off waves of zombie-like creatures while building elaborate fortifications to protect your base. It was cooperative tower defense with a cartoonish art style, and Epic was convinced they had something special. They were very, very wrong. Development hit roadblock after roadblock. Epic began using Fortnite as the testing ground for the new Unreal Engine 4, which slowed everything down. Then Epic realized the game needed deep progression systems like role-playing games, which meant bringing in new designers and completely rethinking their approach, resulting in some internal pushback. But the real turning point came when Chinese gaming giant Tencent invested in Epic Games in 2012, taking approximately 40% ownership of Epic in exchange for the massive cash infusion. This deal was strategic for both companies. Tencent was already dominating the Chinese gaming market with their expertise in games as a service models, and they wanted access to Western markets and Epic's technology. For Epic, this was their chance to transition away from selling traditional boxed games and into the much more profitable world of ongoing service-based gaming. The investment caused a massive shakeup at Epic. Key executives left, including Cliff Bleszinski, the designer behind Gears of War, and one of the most recognizable faces in gaming. Bleszinski wasn't just any developer, he was Epic's creative vision, their public face. and one of the industry's biggest personalities. When he left, it was like losing the creative soul of the company. But the Tencent deal fundamentally changed Epic's approach to Fortnite. Epic chose to use Fortnite as their spearhead for the games as a service model, which created additional hurdles and complications. They were no longer just making a game, they were creating a platform that could generate ongoing revenue through constant updates, events, and player engagement. This shift in philosophy slowed development even further and added layers of complexity that the original vision never required. By the time Save the World finally launched in July 2017, Epic had been working on it for 6 years. 6 years! To put that in perspective, most successful games are developed in 2 to 3 years. Epic had invested enormous amounts of time, money, and reputation into this project, and when it launched, it flopped. Now, Save the World did reach 1 million players, which might sound like success. But Epic Games wasn't some indie studio hoping for a modest hit. They were the creators of Unreal Engine, one of the most successful game development tools ever made. They had built Gears of War, which sold millions of copies. For Epic, 1 million players across all platforms after 6 years of development wasn't success, it was an embarrassment. Even after launch, Save the World was still bleeding money. The initial development costs were sunk, but Epic was continuing to invest heavily on game updates, server maintenance, customer support, and marketing, all for a game no one was playing. In the gaming industry, you don't just launch a game and walk away, especially a live service game like Save the World. You need constant content updates, bug fixes, and new features to keep players engaged. All of that costs money, and Save the World wasn't generating enough to cover those costs. The reviews were tepid at best. PC Gamer gave it a 55 out of 100, calling the progression systems confusing and the gameplay repetitive. Players found the game overwhelming and directionless. Epic had created something that was technically impressive, but fundamentally unfun. But then, while Epic was struggling with their zombie survival game, a small development team led by a modder named Brendan Green had just released a game called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. It was a completely different concept. 100 players dropped onto an island, fighting until only one remained. The game was unpolished, built by a tiny team, but it was selling millions of copies and breaking Steam records. And it was built on Epic's Unreal Engine. Epic's executives looked at PUBG's success and realized the hard reality. They had spent 6 years trying to perfect complex systems and deep progression mechanics, but PUBG proved that players wanted something more immediate, more exciting, simpler even. They didn't want to spend hours learning crafting systems. They wanted to drop in and start fighting. Epic had all the pieces they needed to build their own battle royale game. They had the Unreal Engine. They had the art assets from Save the World. They had the building mechanics. They had the servers and the infrastructure. What they didn't have was time to waste. Epic had one shot left, and they had a vision to take their biggest failure and make it their biggest success. And this vision would have seemed insane to any rational business executive. They would build a battle royale competitor to PUBG in just 8 weeks. The internal reaction was explosive. Many developers were horrified at the idea of essentially copying PUBG's formula. PUBG was built using Epic's own Unreal Engine, and the teams had been working closely together. Epic had intimate knowledge of PUBG's technical challenges and solutions. To many at Epic, this felt like a personal betrayal. The ethical concerns were real, but so was the business opportunity. Tim Sweeney saw something that others missed. PUBG's success proved that the Battle Royale market was massive, not limited to just one game. And PUBG's technical problems, server crashes, bugs, performance issues, left room for a more polished competitor. But there was another factor driving Epic's aggressive pivot: Tencent. Remember that 40% stake Tencent had acquired in Epic back in 2012? This wasn't just any investor. This was the Chinese gaming giant that had perfected the art of free-to-play games. Well, Tencent understood something that most Western developers didn't. You don't make money by selling games anymore. You make money by creating ongoing relationships with players. And Battle Royale, with its endless replayability and social dynamics, was perfect for this model. The clunky and overcomplicated building mechanics in Save the World made perfect sense in a Battle Royale. While PUBG players could only hide behind existing cover, Fortnite players could create their own. It was the one feature that truly differentiated Epic's game from the growing crowd of PUBG clones. The development team worked around the clock, cannibalizing every useful asset from Save the World. The cartoon art style that had seemed so wrong for a survival game was perfect for a more accessible, family-friendly battle royale. The server infrastructure built for cooperative PvE easily supported competitive PvP. It was as if Save the World was made to become battle royale. The risks were enormous. PUBG Corporation could argue that Epic was stealing their concept using insider knowledge. The existing Save the World community already was beginning to feel abandoned. Epic was essentially admitting their 6-year project was a failure. And if the Battle Royale mode flopped, Epic would have wasted development resources on 2 failed games instead of 1. On September 26, 2017, Fortnite Battle Royale launched. Within 10 days, it had surpassed 10 million players. By November, it had reached 20 million unique players. In just 2 months, Epic had gone from having a failed game to having a legitimate competitor to the biggest game in the world. Epic also made Fortnite Battle Royale free to play. PUBG cost $30, which created a barrier for many potential players. Epic was betting that they could make more money from microtransactions than from upfront sales, an astonishingly revolutionary concept for Western game markets at the time. Their earlier legal concerns weren't just paranoia. PUBG Corporation filed a lawsuit against Epic Games in South Korea in January 2018, claiming that Fortnite Battle Royale infringed on PUBG's copyrights. But market observers predicted it would be difficult due to PUBG itself being derived from Japanese horror action movie Battle Royale. Everyone agreed that PUBG had a slim chance of winning the case, and by June 2018, the lawsuit had been closed. And here's the thing that makes this story so remarkable. None of this was supposed to happen. Fortnite Battle Royale was never in any business plan. It wasn't the result of years of market research or careful strategic planning. It was a desperate pivot by a company with a failing game, built in a matter of weeks using leftover assets from a project that nobody wanted to play. Epic had accidentally created the perfect storm. They had a failed game with perfect underlying technology, a rival product that proved there was a market, and just enough time to build something before that market closed. It was a cosmic accident that would generate tens of billions of dollars in revenue and change the gaming industry forever. Now, here's where things get absolutely mental. Fortnite Battle Royale was the kind of exponential explosion that breaks spreadsheets. By mid-2018, less than a year after launch, Fortnite had 125 million registered players. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the population of Japan in 10 months for a game genre that didn't exist a year earlier. But the numbers only tell part of the story. What made Fortnite different wasn't just that it was free. Plenty of games are free. It was that Epic had accidentally created the perfect storm of accessibility and virality. First, they made Fortnite playable everywhere. Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Nintendo Switch, mobile phones. If it had a screen and an internet connection, Fortnite probably ran on it. More importantly, everyone could play together, regardless of platform. Cross-platform gaming existed before then, but not like this. A kid on their phone could squad up with friends on Xbox and PC simultaneously. That barrier between platforms, gone, along with the #1 excuse friends had for not trying out a new game. Second, it was genuinely family friendly. While PUBG aimed for that gritty military aesthetic, Fortnite looked like a Saturday morning cartoon. Parents weren't worried about letting their kids play Fortnite, which meant their player base could include literally everyone from age 8 to 80. But the real genius was the building mechanic. This wasn't just another shooter where you ran around and shot people. When someone started shooting at you, you could build a wall, then a ramp, then a tower. Suddenly, every fight became this three-dimensional chess match of construction and destruction. It was uniquely Fortnite, and it turned out an entire generation of kids absolutely loved it. Epic had built the infrastructure to handle this growth, and that's where their years of engine development really paid off. They had proprietary matchmaking systems that could pair up players across different platforms seamlessly. Their content pipeline was so efficient, they could push out weekly updates with new items, map changes, and features. Most game developers struggle to release major updates quarterly. Epic was doing it weekly. They had dedicated live service teams working around the clock, and players could feel it. The game was evolving every single week. By this point, something interesting was happening. Fortnite was becoming a platform. Kids weren't just playing Fortnite, they were hanging out in Fortnite. It was becoming their social space, their entertainment hub, their cultural center. And Epic was watching all of this happen, probably pinching themselves because they now had the most valuable thing in gaming, an engaged, massive audience who genuinely loved both the game and the company making it. And here's the thing about having 125 million players. They all want to buy stuff, and Epic was about to completely reinvent how that worked. Epic broke the entire video game industry, not through some revolutionary technology or groundbreaking gameplay mechanics, but through something much simpler. They figured out how to make people want to pay for a free game. The Battle Pass launched in Season 2, costing about $10. But this wasn't pay to win. There were no loot boxes, no gambling mechanics, no maybe you'll get the thing you want if you spend enough money. Instead, Epic created something completely different. They made paying feel like earning. You buy the Battle Pass, then you play the game to unlock rewards. Exclusive skins, emotes, back bling, pickaxes. But here's the genius part. These weren't random rewards from a slot machine. You could see exactly what you'd get and exactly how to get it. Complete challenges, gain experience, unlock the next tier. This was designed around status, not power. You weren't paying to get better at the game. You were paying for the right to show everyone else how much you'd played the game. It was brilliant social psychology wrapped in a $10 package. Then there was the item shop. Every day, new cosmetics would rotate in and out. Today's skin might not be available tomorrow. Want that particular dance emote? Better buy it now, because who knows when it'll come back. The psychology behind this approach reveals something fundamental about consumer behavior. This wasn't just about gambling or manipulation. Your character's appearance became a form of self-expression. Rare skins became a badge of honor, proof you'd been playing since the early days. Choosing your outfit became as important as choosing your landing spot. It also meant you had to log in every single day, or the store might have something you missed out on. This was a matter of player identity, and nobody had to pay anything. The game was completely free and completely fair. But if you wanted to stand out, if you wanted to express yourself, if you wanted to flex on your friends, well, Epic had exactly what you needed. The psychology was perfect. Players didn't feel scammed or pressured. Those with flashy skins weren't seen as sellouts with big wallets, but as skilled players worth noticing. Players felt seem. They felt like the company understood what they actually wanted, which wasn't advantages or shortcuts. They wanted to look cool. The results were shocking. This monetization model that was supposedly secondary to the actual game turned out to be significantly more effective than loot boxes, gambling mechanics, or any other system the industry had tried. And it felt completely ethical. Epic had accidentally discovered that the best way to make money wasn't to force people to pay, it was to make them want to pay. And then the real numbers started coming in, ripped from court-ordered financial reports that nobody was supposed to see. In 2020, when Epic sued Apple over App Store policies, something incredible happened. For the first time in the company's history, Epic's private financial records became public evidence, and what those documents revealed was absolutely staggering. Fortnite made $5.4 billion in 2018. Let me say that again, $5.4 billion in 1 year from a free game. The following year, another $3.7 billion. By 2020, the total was over $9 billion in just 3 years. To put that in perspective, Grand Theft Auto V, one of the most successful entertainment products ever made, took 6 years to hit $6 billion. Call of Duty, an entire franchise spanning decades, makes about $3 billion per year across multiple games. Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar's massive budget masterpiece, made $500 million in its launch window. Fortnite beat all of them. A free game built from the scraps of a failed zombie survival project outperformed every premium game on the market. This wasn't just success, this was a complete rewriting of how the entertainment industry could work. Epic had proven something that nobody thought was possible. Free could be more profitable than paid. Think about that for a second. The game industry had spent decades perfecting the art of selling $60 experiences. Premium games with massive marketing budgets and carefully crafted single-player campaigns. Meanwhile, Epic gave their game away for free and made more money than any of them. They'd broken the fundamental equation that the entire industry was built on. Quality costs money, therefore players should pay upfront for quality. Except Fortnite proved that wasn't true. Players would pay more for digital clothes than they'd ever pay for the actual game. $9 billion from banana suits and dance moves, from a game that started as a development disaster and became the most profitable piece of entertainment software ever created. The industry would never be the same. Epic wasn't done, because while other companies were still trying to figure out how to make games profitable, Epic was busy turning Fortnite into something much bigger than a game. April 2020, middle of a global pandemic, everyone stuck at home. And then Travis Scott announces he's performing a concert, not in a venue, not on a live stream, inside Fortnite. 12.3 million people show up live at the same time to watch a virtual concert in a video game. For perspective, that's more than the Super Bowl gets on TV. It wasn't just a concert either, it was a synchronized audio-visual experience where Scott's giant avatar stomped around the game world while reality bent around him. This wasn't gaming anymore, this was something entirely new. Epic had figured out that Fortnite could be a platform for culture itself. Marvel characters started showing up as skins, then Star Wars, then Naruto, Dragon Ball, John Wick. Ariana Grande got her own concert series. Even Hatsune Miku made an appearance because why not? Meanwhile, kids were learning Fortnite dances in real life. The floss, the orange justice, take the L. These weren't just emotes anymore, they were actual cultural phenomena showing up in schoolyards, sports celebrations, and late-night TV shows. Most companies treat cultural relevance as a nice bonus, a little extra marketing push. Epic treats it as everything. They don't just license popular characters, they actively hunt down whatever's trending and figure out how to make it part of Fortnite. They're not following culture, they're helping create it. This is where Epic's strategy gets genuinely brilliant. Fortnite stopped being a battle royale game and became a social platform. Kids weren't just playing Fortnite, they were hanging out in Fortnite, having conversations, building things together, attending events. It became their digital third place. For brands, this created something unprecedented, a marketing ecosystem where advertising didn't feel like advertising. When Marvel puts Iron Man in Fortnite, millions of players don't see a commercial, they see content, they see something cool they can be. Epic had accidentally built the metaverse before anyone knew what the metaverse was supposed to be. A persistent virtual world where people could socialize, express themselves, attend events, and experience culture together. And here's what most companies still don't understand. Epic doesn't treat cultural relevance as a side project. It's the core strategy. They can't just make a good game and hope people play it. They have to stay culturally essential, because the moment Fortnite stops being cool, the moment it stops being where culture happens, the entire business model collapses. So they never stop evolving, never stop collaborating, never stop being the place where the next big thing happens first. They've made cultural relevance into a competitive advantage that nobody else can replicate. Because how do you compete with being everywhere in culture at once? But the real measure of Fortnite's impact wasn't the money it made or the concerts it hosted. It was how completely it rewrote the rules for everyone else. By 2019, every major gaming company was scrambling to build their own Fortnite. Sony, who had spent decades perfecting single-player narrative experiences, suddenly announced they were doubling down on live service games. Microsoft went even bigger, buying ZeniMax for $7.5 billion, then Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion. Not just to compete with Fortnite directly, but to build an ecosystem that could support Fortnite-style ongoing engagement across multiple franchises. Battle Royale modes appeared everywhere. Free-to-play shooters with cosmetic monetization became the new default. But here's what was fascinating to watch. Almost all of them failed to capture what made Fortnite special. They copied the mechanics but missed the spirit. They understood the business model but not the culture building. They made battle royale games but they didn't make platforms. The industry learned the wrong lesson. They thought Fortnite succeeded because it was free to play with cosmetic microtransactions, but that was just the monetization layer. The real innovation was turning a game into a cultural ecosystem that could constantly reinvent itself while maintaining its core identity. But this success didn't come without controversy. $9 billion and global cultural dominance doesn't come without making some enemies along the way. Epic spent years dodging the criticism that destroyed other games. While EA was getting roasted for loot boxes in Star Wars Battlefront, while Activision was facing backlash over pay-to-win mechanics, Fortnite somehow managed to avoid most of the heat, but not all of it. The kids game label stuck early and never really went away, which was both unfair and completely missing the point. Yes, kids played Fortnite, lots of kids, but so did college students, streamers, celebrities, and plenty of adults. Calling it a kids game was like calling McDonald's a kids restaurant because they have Happy Meals. Critics argued that daily item shop rotations and limited time skins were specifically designed to pressure kids into spending money, and they weren't entirely wrong. I've made the same accusations, especially against Valorant. The fear of missing out was definitely part of the psychology, but compared to loot boxes, where you could spend hundreds of dollars and still not get what you wanted, Fortnite's approach felt almost transparent. The dance lawsuit controversy was genuinely messy. Choreographers started suing Epic for using their moves without permission. The floss, the Carlton dance, various TikTok trends. Epic was pulling cultural references and turning them into paid content without crediting or compensating the creators. But the big one was the FTC investigation. Child spending practices. The government looked at Fortnite's monetization and decided that Epic was being too aggressive in targeting kids. In 2022, Epic agreed to pay $520 million to settle the charges. $500 million. Here's what's remarkable though. Why did Fortnite get more scrutiny for this than games with actual gambling mechanics? Loot boxes are literally slot machines for kids. But somehow Fortnite's cosmetic shop was the one that triggered federal intervention. Maybe it was the scale, maybe it was the visibility, or maybe regulators just needed a big enough target to make an example. Despite all this, Epic managed something incredible. They maintained a better public image than almost any other major game company. Players didn't feel scammed by Fortnite the way they felt scammed by loot box games. They stayed culturally relevant when other titles became punchlines. They turned potential controversies into learning experiences and kept moving forward. Epic had proven something that fundamentally challenged how the entire industry operated. Free games could outperform $60 blockbusters. Ongoing engagement could generate more revenue than one-time purchases, and cultural relevance could be more valuable than technical innovation. Traditional game development suddenly looked outdated. Why spend 5 years and $200 million making a single-player adventure that players would finish once when you could build a platform that generated billions in ongoing revenue? Fortnite didn't just change Epic Games, it changed the entire entertainment industry's understanding of what was possible. And 8 years later, everyone's still trying to catch up. So here we are. Not just $9 billion, but now $40 billion later. The development disaster that was supposed to be about fighting zombies became the blueprint for the future of entertainment. But the real revolution wasn't financial, it was psychological. For decades, the gaming industry operated on a simple assumption. Players would pay for power. Better weapons, stronger characters, gameplay advantages. The entire free-to-play market was built around making games deliberately frustrating until players paid to make them less so. Fortnite proved that assumption was completely wrong. Players don't want to buy power. They want to buy identity. They want to express themselves. They want to stand out. They want their digital appearance to reflect their personality, their interests, their sense of style. They'll pay $20 for a skin that does absolutely nothing except make them look cool. This insight changed everything, not just for Epic, but how we understand what people actually value in digital spaces. Status isn't about having the best gear. It's about having the rarest skin, the coolest emote, the most exclusive cosmetic that shows you were there when something special happened. Epic redrew the entire map of what free-to-play could be. They showed that ethical monetization wasn't just possible, it was more profitable. That treating players with respect generated more loyalty than exploiting their weaknesses. That giving people exactly what they wanted instead of what you thought they should want was the key to everything. Fortnite became more than a game, it became the proof that the old ways of doing business were broken, and that someone willing to think differently could build something unprecedented. The game that nobody wanted to play in 2017 taught the entire world a lesson about value, identity, and what people are actually willing to pay for in the digital age. And that lesson was worth billions of dollars. Sometimes the best way to succeed is to give everything away for free. And sometimes a development disaster can change everything. Thank you so much to my patrons for supporting this content, and I'll see you on the next one.